Hey guys, welcome to Distance Learning with Lee, and in today's video we are going to be looking at factorizing a quadratic equation. Alright, so we're going to be looking at the methods to use in factorizing a quadratic equation that's in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Okay, so let's just have a look at a few examples, right? And I need you guys to tell me from the list that I've given you, which one of these is a quadratic equation in its general form. Okay. Right. So let's look at the first one. Is this one a quadratic equation in its general form? Hey, the first one is not a quadratic equation. In fact, this one is a linear equation. So that one is a no. All right. The second one, 7x squared plus 10x plus 7 is equal to 0. Is that one a quadratic equation in its general or standard form? Yes, in fact, this is a quadratic equation in its general form. Let's look at this one. Is this one a quadratic equation in its general form? 4x cubed plus 5x squared plus 2x plus 10 is equal to 0. No, this one is not a quadratic equation in its general form. In fact, this one is a cubic equation, right? So, if you are given a question, a quadratic equation that's in a form of 7x squared plus 10x plus 7 is equal to 0, or in a form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, then, right, this is the method that you can use in factorizing it, okay, so that you can solve for x. So you get two instances, right, where you're given a quadratic equation that's in its general form that can be factorized, okay, and you're also given a quadratic equation that's in its general form, but it does not factorize. All right, so in today's video I'll be looking at what happens if you're given a quadratic equation in its general form, right, of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, and it can be factorized. Okay, so this is a quadratic equation that can be factorized. These are the steps you need to take in factorizing this type of a quadratic equation, right? So the first thing you do is you look at the sign of the constant term. Okay, you look at the sign of the constant term. All right, so the sign is gonna guide you. Okay, so the first step is you look at the sign of the constant term, and the constant term in this case is -4. That's your constant term, and the sign for the constant term is this negative here, right? So that's what we look at. The second thing that we're going to look at is we're going to find the factors of the constant term. Okay, we're going to find the factors of the constant term, and the last thing, we're going to determine which combination of the two factors will work out. It will work for us in helping us to factorize our quadratic equation. Okay, I'll go over it again. We're going to first look at the sign of the constant term. Number 2, we're going to find the factors of the constant term. And number 3, we're going to determine which combination of those two factors will work in helping us to factorize our quadratic equation. All right, let's get into it. Okay, cool. So we said we're going to start with just looking at the sign. Okay, so what does this sign tell us? All right, it tells us that in our factorized bracket, we need to have a combination of signs, right, that when I multiply them together, they will still lead back to giving us a negative. Right, so let's go through that. If you take a negative sign, a negative multiplied by a negative sign, what does that give us? A positive multiplied by a positive sign, what does that give us? And a positive multiplied by a negative sign, what does that give us? Okay, that's what we're looking at right now. A negative times a negative, so any negative value multiplied by any negative value will always give us a negative value. Any positive value multiplied by any positive value will give us a positive value, and any positive value multiplied by any negative value will always give us a negative value, right? So because we've got a negative sign here, that means that the combo of signs that we need to use in our two brackets needs to be a combination of a positive and a negative, because when I multiply any positive number with any negative number, I get a negative number, right? So we've determined the signs that we're going to use. Okay, so I'm going to put the two brackets. Okay, because you're trying to factorize this quadratic equation, so I'm going to put out two brackets there, right? Obviously is equal to 0, right? We've got x and x there, right? Okay, and then we said that we look at the sign here, the sign of the constant term, right? And we found that that sign is a negative, right? And because it's a negative, that means that we need to choose a combination of signs that if I multiply them together, they'll give us a negative. And we found that that combination is a positive, right, multiplied by a negative will equal a negative sign, right? So therefore we're going to have a positive and a positive, and we are going to have a negative, right? Cool. And then the second thing that we need to do is we need to find the factors of 4. We need to find the factors of 4, guys. So what are factors? Factors are numbers that go into a number without leaving a remainder. Okay, factors are numbers that go into a number without leaving a remainder. So what would be the factors of 4? The factors of 4 would be 1, right? Because 1 goes into 4 times. 2, right? Because 2 goes into 4 2 times, and 4, right? Because 4 goes into 4 once without leaving a remainder. So those are our factors, right? So this is the first step, right? This is the second step, finding the factors, right? And number 3, the third step is that we need to find a combination that will help us factorize this quadratic equation. Okay, we need to find a combination of these factors that will help us factorize this equation. So what's the first thing we do? Okay, so we're going to first look at a combination of so we're going to find two numbers that we're going to use. That number 1, right? Number 1, that if we add and subtract them, add them together, right? Add them together, they will give us a negative 3, right? So when we add them, they will give us this negative 3, okay? And when we multiply them, they'll give us a 4. Okay, so we need to find from the factors two numbers that we can use in these brackets, that when we add them together, when we add those two numbers together, they'll give us a negative 3. And when we multiply those two numbers together, they'll give us a negative 4. Alright, so the negative 4 there. Okay, cool. So let's see. What happens if I choose 1 and 4? Right? What happens when I choose 1 and 4? Okay. When I choose 1, it's going to be a positive 1. And when I choose 4, it's going to be a negative 4. What happens when I say plus 1, right, minus 4? Plus 1 minus 4 is equal to negative 3, right? And what happens when I say plus 1 multiplied by minus 4? What happens when I multiply them? Okay. What happens when I multiply the positive 1 and the negative 4? Okay. Plus 1 multiplied by negative 4 is equal to negative 4. Therefore, this combination, right, the positive 1 and the negative 4 combo is the combo that we need in factorizing this quadratic equation. Okay. Okay, so we said that it is, right? We got the sign, so it's just a 1 plus the 1, positive 1, and the negative 4. Okay, so how do we know that this is correct, right? How do you know that this answer is in fact the factorized, after we factorize this equation, this is the correct answer? How do we know that? We basically do a check to see if what we've written is correct. Okay, so what happens when you multiply or bracket out? When you multiply your bracket out, you must check that you're gonna still get that same answer. When you multiply this bracket out, you must check to see if you'll still get x squared minus 3x minus 4, right? So that's what we're doing. We're just gonna be doing a check, right? Okay, so we're gonna multiply our bracket out. X multiplied by x. Okay. X multiplied by x is equal to x squared, and x multiplied by minus 4 is minus 4x. 1 multiplied by x is positive 1x, and 1 multiplied by negative 4 is negative 4, which is equal to 0. And if you simplify this equation, you'll have x squared minus 4x plus x is equal to minus 3x minus 4, which is equal to 0. Therefore, this tells us that we have factorized our equation correctly, and therefore the factorized version of our quadratic equation will be x open bracket x plus 1 close bracket open bracket x minus 1. Okay, therefore we can continue to solve for x. So this is correct. Okay, that's 0. Okay, I'm just going to put it in orange again. So we know that this is in fact correct because we've checked by multiplying out our bracket x minus 4, which is equal to 0. And therefore solving for x plus 1 is equal to 0. X minus 4 is equal to 0. Therefore x is equal to negative 1. And x is equal to 4. Right, we just moved the positive 1 to the right hand side and the negative 4 to the right hand side, and therefore the sign changed. Okay, all right guys, and in the next video I'll be explaining to you guys what happens when you are given a quadratic equation that's in its general form of ax squared plus bx plus c, and you cannot factorize it using this method. I'll be explaining to you which method you can use in factorizing that kind of a quadratic equation. Okay, guys, so please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and please share the channel with your friends, especially if they're doing mathematics. It will really be beneficial for their learning. And guys, I'll see you guys on my next upload. Thank you so much, and goodbye.